All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session today. My name is Mel Young. I am an educational developer with Cambrian College in our Teaching and Learning Innovation Hub. So I essentially, just as an educational developer, support faculty with any kind of pedagogy in their classroom, classroom management strategies, course development, things like that. And I was fortunate enough to work on a VLS project for eCampus Ontario, which helped me to really hone my skills for project management, especially across multiple institutions. So that's a little bit of the background of why I'm here today. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Wendorf. I am a senior instructional designer at Cambrian College working with Mel. And I've worked on a few different Pressbook projects. I've worked directly with eCampus Ontario, working with H5P within Pressbooks. We delivered a session at TESS at the conference a couple of years ago, working in Pressbooks. And then we also worked on a few micro-credentials for Cambrian with Pressbooks. So yeah, so it's an exciting tool to dig into. And how many of you, just a quick show of hands if you want to use the reactions in here in Zoom, how many of you have used Pressbooks before? All right, a few people. Awesome. Great. So you're in the right session. So if you have used it before, that's awesome. Maybe we can give you some more tips that you can take home with you. And if you haven't, this will be a nice introduction for you as well. So Mel will take it away to do the beginning part, and then I will close the session later on with some how-to instructions on how to work with Pressbooks.
Thanks, Sarah. So we kind of broke up our session into two different pieces, and we don't have a slide deck just because we wanted it to kind of be a conversation. But the first part is really talking about the project management, especially when you're working with a large team that's working on this. If you're working on, I see somebody said they were working on an open educational resource, or if you're working on a textbook or some kind of big undertaking when you're looking at creating something in Pressbooks. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do the project management piece, and then Sarah will follow that up with a lot of like how-tos and little tips and tricks for Pressbooks. So the first thing was for project management, even though you might have like a call for proposal, or you might have, like a document that's talking about what the goal is for your Pressbook. Like for example, with the VLS project, we put in a proposal and all that kind of stuff, and it was across multiple institutions, but that's really not enough to unify your vision. So what's really important is if you get the team together and you talk about, what's the goal? Why are you creating the Pressbook? The purpose, what kind of major topics do you want to cover? You might want to break it into chapters, major topics and subtopics. And all those conversations need to really happen at the beginning so that everyone's kind of on the same team. It's also really important to look at the deadline for these projects and then work backwards from there. So, having, what is the go live date? And then work backwards from there about, well, when do you want to have, the Pressbook ready for review, right? So that there's ample time for a review with feedback. And then if you need to, you can go in and you can make updates. And then when do we want things to be publish ready, right, in the Pressbook, ready for that review? And then so kind of working backwards from there. You also probably want to talk about the learning outcomes for your entire project, so everyone's on the same page. And then breaking down the roles and responsibilities. So who's doing the instructional design for Pressbook, who's writing the content, who's doing the research, who's creating activities, who's doing what chapter, all that kind of stuff. One of the things that we ended up doing was creating a project management document that allows us to have everything on, in one space where people can work together. So Sarah's going to share that in the chat. So this project management document really allows you to create those dates so everyone's on the same page with the deadlines. But then it also has like a table of who does what and by when, and then what the status is. So if it's complete, if it's in progress, not started yet. And this allows you to kind of get an entire vision of the overall project and where people are at. So you can click on that link if you'd like to just see what that document looks like. We also included important notes about the project that we had all agreed to. So example, things like we agreed to use Google Docs because we're able to all be using it at the same time. We can all make changes in real time. You might choose to use, Microsoft Online, something like that. Some of the other things that we talked about was like including all of like your in-text citations, alt text. We wanted everything to be included. So we kind of came to an agreement on using APA and things like that. The other thing that we talked about was also like what kind of Creative Commons license we want on the Pressbooks. Do we want it CC BY? Do we want it, CC BY NC? Like what type of license do we want on it? Because everyone on your team really should be on the same page with the license that you attach to that Pressbook. And then also just to kind of think about how long, when you're creating like a chapter, especially if you're creating modules from the chapters, how long should the content be? Because you don't want to have, one person on the team working on a chapter that ends up being 6 hours of content and work, and then someone else creates a chapter that maybe takes an hour. You want some kind of consistency across all of the chapters, all of the modules. So you can set that up all at the beginning in your initial conversation.
I shared the link to your project management doc, Mel, in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I also put a link to your HiFlex Pressbook if you want to show those.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Laura can't get it to copy.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try one more link. 1 second there, Laura.
Thanks, Sarah, for troubleshooting. Another really key thing is to create and set up recurring meetings right away so that it's already booked in your calendar. It's really good especially if you're working on like a larger team, especially if it's like across institutions, to set up those recurring meetings to make sure that you're able to have touch points and discuss like your progress, challenges, barriers, celebrate your successes, all those things, just to keep the project going on track. The second part is really looking at setting up some type of chapter template so that everyone, especially if it's different people working on different chapters, we want there should be some cohesion in how those chapters look like. So creating that template up front really helps everyone to kind of have the same idea or the same format. So I see Sarah also shared the chapter template in the chat. And actually what I'll do is I'll share my screen for this one just so you can kind of see what it looks like. You should be able to see it now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we see it.
So we have obviously the chapter title comes first. And then if there's individual authors that you want for each chapter, you can put who was responsible for those chapters. Your team might come to an agreement that it's a collaborative project. So like the authors' names are only like at the front end of the book and not on every chapter. And that's a conversation that you can have with the team. And then this is just an example. So we put in learning outcomes at the beginning, and then a brief chapter introduction. So what's the chapter about? Why, what's the purpose for, somebody reading this chapter? What should they take out of it? And then we just put an example of a publish ready text for an image. So if the person on the team wants to add an image, they can just put a little snippet of the image, put the citation in where it was from, and the source link in case so that you can go back and you can get like the actual size to embed that in Pressbook. And then it's important to have the alt text so that when the instructional designer goes from this document and they're putting things into Pressbook that the alt text is there, they just copy and paste. And then, you'd have your units within the chapter. Your chapter might just be one unit, or it might be multiple units. You'll see in the HiFlex textbook that Sarah shared that we have multiple units within one chapter. And then activities. So if you want to include activities, it could be things that people can just think about, like read this, consider this, here's a scenario or a case study. Or you might embed activities in H5P, and Sarah's going to talk about a little bit of that when she talks about her part there. And then obviously you always want to include your references. So again, we chose to use APA format for our chapter. Does anybody have any questions so far just about like the project management piece? Maybe something that you've experienced and you want to share? You can unmute or you can share it in the chat. All right, talkative group today.
I put a link in the chat, the template that Mel just shared, the chapter template. Oh, I see Shauna's hand up. Just one moment. I'm just going to add something about the link that I just shared. If you want to see what a completed chapter looks like in Pressbooks, based on the template that Mel just shared, that's one that they created in the HiFlex textbook. But go ahead, Shauna.
Hi guys, it's nice to see you both. No, so I guess my question is then just, do you help people when they're having kind of technical issues within Pressbooks, or do you kind of let them go and then, kind of pop in and give them some training resources? Like, how do you find that process works? And I guess from a sustainability perspective, right? I
know for our projects that we've worked on where we have an instructional designer on our team, the instructional designer is usually doing all of the tech stuff, which makes, I don't want to say makes it super easy, because then they're troubleshooting tech issues, but they often connect with other IDs to kind of troubleshoot. But when we're working with faculty who've never used Pressbooks, what we often do is actually Sarah will create a video. This is how you do the thing. So that then that way, anyone else that asks a question, now we have this kind of asynchronous resource, because what we want to do is build capacity. And it's challenging because in a teaching and learning center, when you're only a few people, you can't do all the work for everyone. So I think building those asynchronous resources to help people and support people helps to build that sustainability or build that capacity that you were referring to. Does that answer your question, Shauna? Yeah, totally. And I am on the same page as you, because we're obviously facing the same things where we have so much interest, and how do you support everyone? And we have new people coming in all the time. And so, yeah, if, you guys have videos you want to share, like, please feel free to email them. We're trying to put stuff together too, which we will share as well. But, we were often kind of pointing folks to the Pressbooks support resources, but they don't always, maybe approach things the same way. So yeah, that was just my question. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the Pressbooks resources are often like text-based, right? So sometimes the faculty just want to be able to see it happening in real time on the screen, like click here, go here, do this thing. So the videos come in handy for sure. We have on our hub channel, we might have a few of those, unless there's something that we just share privately. But we'll look at putting those a little bit more public. We didn't know about like putting up like the how-to videos, but if we should, or.
I've asked eCampus before, because they're the ones that manage the Pressbooks account that we're going to show you. I think they were in the process of creating some how-to resources like videos and stuff like that, but I could follow up with them and find out if they do have any. But I don't think we have any specific to Pressbooks. We have a lot of H5P videos that we can share, but not so much like general Pressbooks.
Are there any other questions just before we move on? All right. As you think of questions, you can always just pop them into the chat if you'd like as well. I think the one takeaway just from like the project management piece is really having the entire team that's working on this project to be on the same page, and then those consistent check-ins to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and that those due dates are going to be met. You know, hard lessons learned when you're you know, you're coming up on a deadline and now it's like crunch time, and you know, the project's at risk of not being done by like your, you know, your agreed upon due date. So those are some lessons learned anyway. All right, Sarah, did you want to switch into the Pressbooks piece?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest about project management. Asana is a great tool as well. Yeah, Shauna, that's a great one. We've tried a few different tools. Like we've tried some of the free versions of some of those tools that are out there, and the simplest tool for us seems to be Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, all of those tools. So you know, we've advised faculty to create, like we're a Microsoft institution, as many of you probably are as well. But we've advised faculty that, you know, Google Docs is one of the simplest tools where you just click the link and then you start typing, it automatically saves. You don't need to worry about anything. And they can create a free Google account using their Cambrian College email address, which is, you know, very simple because that separates if they have their own Google account for their private stuff. They can separate their work and their home Google accounts. So that's really helpful. But I can show another example. I know we're kind of going off topic here, not really off topic, but if people are interested in project management and how we do that through Google Docs, I can just show something really quick. How we do our course development project management. And this is similar to how we would develop a Pressbooks project. So similar to something like that. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so you should see an example of a Google Drive here. So this is one of the courses that we've developed with one of our faculty members. And I just want to show how we use Google Drive and Google Docs to do this project management piece. So when we start with a new faculty member with one of our courses, now imagine this is a Pressbooks project that we're working on, we would create a brand new folder. So we have a team folder that we have here for all of our projects that is just shared amongst our team. But then for these individual small folders within, we would share that folder with the specific faculty member that we're working with. So it could be the project team or whoever it is that's part of it. And then we have a set of standard templates that we would copy over into this folder. So what Mel was talking about with the chapter template and the project management template, it's similar to how we would do that with these types of courses as well. So we would have a checklist, we have a homework doc. So I'll show you that really quick here. So the project management template that Mel shared, this one here has a who, does what, by when, and a status. So we always put that in our documents for any project because we found that that is a good accountability piece for everybody who's on board with the project. And then before the end of every meeting, when we're meeting with people, we would just fill this out really quick to say, okay, what is everyone working on? And then set the date for the next meeting. And then everyone would have their work to do. And then asynchronously, people could fill in the status column to say, you know, I'm done, or they can add notes. So, you know, you can highlight it, you can add a note to say, you know, Mel, can you take a look at this? Or, you know, you can tag people in here as well, and they'll get an email automatically saying that that they're being asked a question in here. And of course, you can link, you can put videos, you can put photos, images, anything that you need in here. So we've done this very successfully with, I want to say what, Mel, like over 80 projects I think we've done using this system here. And it just seems to be a very simple tool. People don't need extra accounts. They don't need anything to access this. So it's kind of agnostic depending on what people are using. They just need an internet browser to access the tool. Yeah, and then looking at Mel's project management template here. So anything that needs to be added to this doc, like, you know, when you're doing your introductory meeting, it could just be like, you know, here are the agreed upon things that we as the project team are going to take on. And as Mel mentioned too, everyone has a role to play. So that's very clearly laid out in here as well. But I love the chapter template. Mel shared this with me the other day, and it's really helpful. And I really like the example here from the HiFlex Pressbook. They did a fantastic job with this book. So you can kind of see what it looks like in the final stages of here. So that's what I wanted to show about project management with Google Drive and Google Docs. Any questions about that? Does anyone use Google Drive or Google Docs? A couple of people. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's just one of the many tools that are out there, and we found that has been really helpful for us. Okay, so we're going to move now into the part about how to set up and use Pressbooks. So if you're very, very familiar with Pressbooks and you've done this before, you're welcome to stick around if you want. You may or may not learn something new today, but I'm going to start kind of present it as an intro to Pressbooks. So from the very, very beginning, how to set up an account, how to log in, how to start working on your project. And like Mel said, please jump into the chat at any point. We are recording, so we will give you access to this recording after the session. So please don't feel like you need to, scramble and make notes as we go along. Mel will be my moderator as I go along, so she'll keep an eye on the chat and she'll share some links as I go along. Okay, so let me just get set up here and then I will share my screen. I'm just going to close all the windows that I have open right now. All right, okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. So what I'm going to show you here is the eCampus access to Pressbooks. So eCampus Ontario has purchased Pressbooks as a license for all Ontario educators. And this is a great tool. It's free for anyone that has a college or university email address as a staff member or faculty member. So if that's you, then you can definitely sign up for a free account. I'm going to throw that in the chat. So your starting point will be ecampusontario.pressbooks.pub. And from here, I'll show you the steps of how to create your Pressbook. So the first thing you'll do is you can request an account if you don't already have one. So really quickly, I'll just show you what that looks like. It's just a form that you have to fill in, and then someone at eCampus Ontario will verify that you indeed are a faculty member or a staff member at your institution. So you just fill in this form. You would select your institution from this list. So you'll see it's all the Ontario institutions, who you are. So it's even available to students, which is great. So if you want your students to be working on collaborative Pressbooks projects, or if you want them to create one on their own, they can do that as well. And then you would submit, and then I would say probably a couple of days later, you'll hear back from eCampus Ontario. Now, the other way to get access to an account, if I go back, if you already have an account, you can invite other educators into Pressbooks by sending them a login link. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to quickly log in. I'll log into my Pressbooks account here. So you'll see once I'm logged in here, I have access to admin and my books. So those are the two tools that I'll show you here. So when I go to admin, you'll be brought into the dashboard area of Pressbooks. So how many of you are familiar with WordPress? Have you used WordPress before? Have you heard of WordPress? Angela. Okay. All right. So for those of you who maybe haven't used WordPress before or aren't familiar with it, it's very similar to WordPress. So WordPress is a platform that you can use to build websites, and Pressbooks is sort of like the book version of that. So WordPress is websites, Pressbooks' books. But the interface is very similar. So you would notice that it would look the same if you were using both tools. So once you're logged in here, you can click on My Books, and that will bring you into your catalog. So I'll just show you what that looks like for me. I have a few different Pressbooks in here. So you'll see these are all of the ones that I've worked on. And they'll just live here forever as long as I have my account. You don't have to worry about those expiring or going anywhere. But what I'll do is I can show you the process of creating a new book, how to add users, how to start working on your first chapter. So please stop me, Mel, if there are chat questions that come up. So the first thing that you'll do is you're going to create a new book. So when you're hovering over My Books, you'll click on Create a New Book. For here, this is just telling me that I'm part of all of these books, but I'm going to create a new one here. So I'll just call it Sample Book May 25, 2022. Now, here's a really important thing. Actually, I'm not going to call it that. This is the important thing. This URL right here, this web book address, you can't change that. So be very sure that when you're putting your webbook address in, that it's exactly what you want it to say. So think about the future of your project. And I'll just call this sample testing book for now, just for the purposes of showing you what this is. I can always delete it later. It's not a big deal. But if you're working on a project like, for example, Mel's HighFlex project, they had to really think as a project team what they wanted that to show up as online, like what they wanted that URL to be for their book. So it's really important to keep that in mind. And I'll just call it sample for testing purposes. English, and then your privacy. So I'd always recommend keep it as private for now, just because you're working on it and it's in progress. So you can set that to no. So privacy would be not visible to the public, and then you would click create your book. So what Pressbooks is going to do now is it's going to create my book, and then I'll be able to start adding some users to the book. So I'm just going to wait a sec for that to load. And then I'll show you as well, when it comes time for you to actually make your book public, if you go into the settings, sharing and privacy. So this is the area where then you can make it public when you're ready to share it. So, but right now it's set to private, and there's a few other options in here that you can take a look at as well. Okay, so now that I have my book, it's just if I click visit book, it's just a blank book. If I click read book, there's nothing in here yet. We're ready to go. So when I go back to my admin area, that's where I can access my book. When you look up in your top ribbon up here, as soon as you see the title of your book, then you know you're in the right place. I'm in the admin area for my book. So I have this toolbar here on the left-hand side. Organize that's where you would organize the chapters and the parts of your book. So when you're looking at Mel's HighFlex book, that is the, I wonder if I can pull up, actually I'll pull up another example here. I want to show you what a live book looks like versus what you're seeing here on the back end. So if I click on organize, I'll actually go back to personal care assistant here. Okay, so if I click on organize for my personal care assistant book, this is what it looks like on the front end. So this is what anybody else would see who's not logged in. This is like the public facing book. But on the back end, this is the book that has all of the parts and chapters. So you'll see it's like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. That's how we've organized this book. And the way that shows up on your book is when you click on read book, that shows up here on the left-hand side in your menu. So this is kind of like your table of contents for your book. So that's what the organize section is in your book. The next section here, book info. So that's really just the front page information, who are the contributors. So you can add all of your authors in there, as well as a cover image. And there's some additional metadata that you can add in there, your copyright notice as well. And then a short description, and that would show up on the main page of your book right here. Appearance. So this is where you can change the theme of your book. You've got a few different themes that you can choose from here. And there's probably more that you can download or get access to, but these seem to be a nice display of themes here that you can choose from. And that would be when you click on read book, that's what this part looks like here. So all the internal pages of your book, that's part of that theme. Export is if you ever need to export into another file format. Import it if you're importing a book from somebody else. Publish, so that's when it comes time to, if you want to share it externally to some of these other services, like if you're, building a book that you're going to be, selling or anything like that in the future. Plugins, so just like WordPress, if you're familiar with WordPress, there are plugins for Pressbooks. Now, eCampus has narrowed down this list for us as authors in Ontario as part of this platform that they offer to us. So these are the plugins that are available to us. I highly recommend checking out the H5P plugin. If you've ever seen us on Twitter or heard us talking about H5P, we're big fans of that tool. And that's a great tool where you can add some interactive content to your Pressbook. So things like interactive quizzes, interactive videos, interactive slideshows. There's all kinds of fun things that you can do with H5P, and they can be embedded right into your book. And then there's a few other plugins in here as well that you can take a look at. Stop me anytime, Mel. I'll just keep doing the tour. With media, so this one is a personal care assistant book. So you'll see this is where we've uploaded all of our documents. We have Word docs in here. We have Excel files. We have photos, illustrations. So anything that has to do with visuals or downloads that are part of your Pressbook, you would include them here. And you'll see when you click on them. Actually, I think that one's, let me just show you an example that has, yeah. So when you're uploading a photo in here, make sure for accessibility purposes, there are some fields here that you should be filling in. So alternative text, making sure that's a very descriptive description of the photo. And then the title is fine the way it is. And then the caption could be related to the content that's displayed on the page with the photo. So this one had to do with oral care. But you'll see here, once you upload your photo, you can input all of that content in there, and then you can either choose to display the caption or not. So it's important to include all of that metadata in with your photos. And if you click on library, you'll access all of that. Users is where you can go and add other authors, other editors, contributors to your Pressbook. So you'll see we have quite a few people here. Some people are administrators. So Amanda Baker was the instructional designer that we worked on for this project. So she, administrator, is the highest level of I guess, access that you can have to a Pressbook. So she can make all the changes to the Pressbook. She can delete it even if she chooses to. And then right below that would be, I believe it's an editor is right below that. So an editor is able to add content to your book, but they can't make any global changes to the book. So they can't delete it. They can't change like authors or anything like that. It's kind of a more limited user profile. And then below that is a subscriber. So for example, Charlene Smith, she's one of the managers at Cambrian, and she is just a subscriber. So she has sort of a view only access to the book, and she can see some of the back end of it just so we can show her how it's built. But I don't believe she can make any changes with that level of a role. And when you're adding people, I'll come back to this in one moment, but you would click add new user. I'll just finish going through the toolbar here on the left, but then I'll come back to talk about users, because this will be your next step. Once you create the book, you're going to want to add the users so that you can collaborate on it. Okay, so quickly, I'll just finish going down this list on the side. We have some tools. That looks like something we probably wouldn't need to access. Settings is important. So like I showed you earlier, this is where your book visibility is. There's some different file settings, settings for some of your plugins like H5P. And then once you enable the H5P plugin, you'll see that it shows up here on the left-hand side, and all of the H5P interactive content items that you add to your Pressbook will be listed here, and you'll see Amanda's created quite a few of them, over 3 pages. And for example, if I click on one of them, you'll be able to view the activity. So this one is a drag the words, and she can test it and just check it in here before she adds it to the book. And then I'll show you later how to add that to your book, because you can use these short codes here to add them to your book. That'll kind of be like Pressbooks level 2. If you want to stick around to the very end, I can show you some of the H5P stuff, but I do want to cover the basics first for everybody else. Okay, any questions on the menu at all? Anything coming up in the chat, Mel?
Nope, everything looks good on this end.
Good. Okay. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you is how to add users to your book. So I'm going to go back to my sample for testing purposes book. And what I can do is I'll show you how to add someone who doesn't have access to Pressbooks and someone who does already have an account. So right now I'm looking at my book that I just created. I'm going to go back to the users section here, and you'll see it's just me in the book right now. And I want to add Mel. I know that Mel already has a Pressbook account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an existing user. So I'm going to do Mel Young at cambriancollege.ca. And then you can choose at this point if you want to add them as administrators, which is the highest level. They'll have the same full access that you do, or if you want to give them a different type of role. So if I add Mel as an administrator, once you add an existing user, when you click that button, it'll tell you that the email address is an existing user, and then that person will be sent an email asking them to confirm. So Mel can do that on her end, and then I will see her in this list of users once she has confirmed that invitation from me. If you are adding,
I got it already. Sorry,
right.
Sarah, I got it.
Good. So once Mel accepts that, I'll hit refresh on the users list, and you'll see she'll show up on that list. However, if you're working with like a group of students, for example, who may not already have an existing Pressbooks account, you can go ahead and add those users to Pressbooks. So for example, I'm just thinking I'll do, like if I'm doing Jessica Jones, you can choose how you want to display their username. We typically do first name dot last name. If your institution uses another way of displaying usernames, we just arbitrarily have chosen that as our way of displaying usernames. And then whatever Jessica's email, we would put, Jessica Jones at institution.com or .ca, and then the role. So then you can assign that person the role. And then if that person doesn't have an account, they will be sent an email asking them to set up their new account. And it's just a couple clicks. And then once you're added as a new user, then you'll be able to access the book. So I'll go back, and now you can see that Mel shows up in my list here as an administrator. And that's as easy as it is to add people to your book. So when Mel logs in to her ecampusontario.pressbooks.pub, she will now see sample for testing purposes, this book right here, in her list of books. So now she can collaborate and edit that book, which is really great as a tool. Any questions about users at all? Adding users? Good so far. Okay. And like I said, we're going to record this, or we are recording this, so you can always come back and take a look. Okay, so the next thing I want to show is how to update the theme or the appearance of your book. So I quickly went over this when I was going through the toolbar here, but let's actually make that change to our book. So I'm going to close my Pressbooks book. I'm going to duplicate this tab that I have open. And what I'm going to do on the second tab is I'm going to click Visit Book. And I'm going to click Read Book. So now I'm looking at both the front-facing book and then the back end of the book. And I can just refresh this screen. Every time I make a change on the back end, I can then refresh my screen just to see what that looks like. Okay, so right now it's telling me that my active theme is Malala, and I can change that to any other theme. Let me try to find one that's very different looking from that, just so you can see. I guess this one's kind of script. So then I would click activate on the one that I would like. And what it'll do is it'll just refresh my page here, and then it'll show me that that is now the active theme. So when I come back to the live book here and I hit refresh, you'll see it removed that line. As soon as I add some content here, you'll see that it looks like there's a title now that has like the script writing as part of that theme. So as I'm showing you how to input content, you'll see how that appears on the book. So that is how to add a theme. The next thing is once you're ready with your project management document, so the chapter template. So let me just pull this up again, just to remind you what that looks like. So this template that Mel had shared here, a chapter title. So imagine she's got her title and you've got all of your chapters figured out. So this is sort of the architecture of your book. Once you know what each of those chapters are going to be in your book, then you can input them into the organize section here. So, so you've got your book, your title, your users, your theme. The next thing is organizing your book. So with a blank book, you'll see that there are 3 sections here. There's a front matter, which is the introduction of the book. That's just like as soon as I click read book, it'll have that introduction section. And then in the main body, this is where you're going to add all of the content in your book. So any of the chapters that you're going to be adding. Back matter is the sort of the end of the book. If you've got an appendix, you can put a glossary, you can put references, anything you want to add to that section as well. So let's say I want to add, I'm going to add a chapter here. I'm just going to call it chapter 2 because there's already chapter 1 in my list. And I'm just going to click create. I'll come back to this in 1 second. I'll show you what it looks like in the book. So if I go back to organize, you'll see here now Pressbooks gives you chapter 1 already just as a sample. And then chapter 2 I've just added. So if you want that to show up in your Pressbooks list, there's some checkboxes here. So you want it to show title in your list of kind of that table of contents within the book itself. Okay, so now that I've added another chapter, let's go see if that works. I'm going to go back to my book. I'm looking in the menu right now. I see chapter 1 here. When I hit refresh on my page, we should see chapter 2 now showing up in the list. So now I have chapter 1 and chapter 2. So that's how easy it is to add all of those parts to your book. If you want to have another section, so see how main body, there's the plus minus where you can expand that. If you want to add a part, so that's called a part, then you would do add part. You could choose to organize your book in this way if you want. So maybe I want to call chapter 2, I want it to be its own part where you can expand that section. So I'm just going to click save and I'll show you what the difference is with that. So I have main body chapter 2. So now that I've hit save, I can refresh my page here, look at the menu again. I wonder, is it showing up in, I might need to add some content in there before it shows up. Let me add a chapter to that. So maybe I can call it chapter 2.1. So if you want to organize it similar to our the example that I showed for personal care assistant where we had 1.1, 1.2. Let me just show you what that looks like. Okay, so now that I have a chapter within there, so I have a part and a chapter, I'm going to refresh my page again. Now you'll see it shows up in the list. So the parts are the dark items that you can open and close, and then your chapters are within those. So that's how you can create those subsections, sections and subsections, whatever you want to call them. Pressbooks calls them parts and chapters. Any questions about that? Anything that's not clear?
I really like that the way that things are, you can organize in Pressbooks allows you to create what makes sense logically for the content that you're creating. So whether it's the parts or like the pieces within the chapter, like the chapters within the parts, I think that's a really great feature.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really important at the beginning when Mel was talking about the project management, is having that agreed upon architecture or structure for your book and how you want to organize that. And you can also, like, you can move some things around. I can move it up, I can move it down. So there's a bit of flexibility that you can have within that architecture that you create. Okay, so we've created a part and we've created a chapter. So now imagine that I have completed this chapter template. The folks working on this project each have their own chapters that they're working on. We're using Google Docs because that's a really simple, easy tool. We have that all organized in our shared Google Drive. So now whoever is responsible for inputting that content from Google Drive or Google Docs into Pressbooks can then refer to these chapter templates. So imagine this was Mel's chapter. Imagine this is her title. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to actually edit these chapters. So when you're happy with your architecture, you can just click edit. And right here, imagine I'm going to call this chapter 1. Well, it already has a title, but let's put chapter title. And for accessibility purposes, I'm going to call that heading 1, because if you're using a screen reader, it's going to read according to the hierarchy of the headings that are listed here in your Pressbook. So make sure that anything that is a title is heading 1, subtitles heading 2, and then, kind of, there's no right or wrong to this as long as you have a hierarchy of content on your page, as long as you have, the most important information in the headings 2 or 3, and then anything below that could be 4 or 5 as like subheadings within each of those. So Mel has a chapter title. Now I'm going to put by the authors. So maybe I want that to be heading 2. So that'll be a nice kind of subheading below the heading 1. Learning outcomes. So let's add that in. Here's a really cool thing that you can do within Pressbooks. There are these text boxes. So there are different things that you can add to your book that will kind of like, it highlights them on the page. So it adds like some color, and it kind of formats it into a box on the page. So let's call that learning objectives. And these are all built into Pressbooks, so you don't have to do a lot of formatting here. So because I have them as learning outcomes, I'm just gonna, paste them in here. Number 2, number 3. So imagine you've got that filled in. Okay, so there's the first little bit of my template. One of the workflows that we do, are you trying to stop me, Mel? Do you have a question? No, okay. One of the workflows that we like to follow on our team is we highlight everything in green as soon as we've inputted them into Pressbooks, and then that tells other people on the team that, okay, those are already inputted. Okay, so chapter introduction. Let's take a look at that. So I'm going to paste that in. Now I've used heading 1, heading 2 already. This can be either heading 2 again if I want, or maybe I'll put it as heading 3. So that'll center it. If you don't want it centered, you can always move it over. Maybe I'll move it over and just leave it there. And again, we're talking about that hierarchy. Now, anything that is text or paragraph text, I'm going to insert that into here. And I'm going to make sure that stays as paragraph, because that is just standard text that I'm going to have on my page. Okay, so moving along, I've inputted these into there. Now, Mel has put a divider line here. So if you want, you can include that in here. There is an option here for a horizontal line. It's just a nice thing to add. You'll see it's really faint right here. That's all based on the theme that you choose. So some lines might go all the way across, some might be stylized. This one seems to be centered and it's kind of a gray color. It might look a little different once I click save on my page. Actually, I'm going to click save right now because it doesn't automatically save. And if you accidentally, navigate away, you might lose
Hard lessons learned.
Hard lessons learned. Yes. Good point to always save. Okay. So I've inputted that line in there. So now I'm going to save this image, which I can't save from Google Drive.
That's why I put the link to the original source there, if you want.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Right here. Okay, So that is a good workflow option too that Mel was demonstrating here. So because I can't right click download image like you could in Microsoft Word, I can't do that with Google Docs. That's just one of the things. Mel was kind enough to include the Unsplash link to the original photo. So then I can go to Unsplash and then here I can download it. Got it.
And
Download.
Sarah, this was just also lessons learned.
Yes.
Because then you have to go back and try to find the original image, and it's not that easy.
Yes, yes. We love Unsplash as a place to obtain Creative Commons licensed images. I think they're all CC0, but we like to include the attribution here. So Unsplash will give you the attribution for the author. So when you're inputting that into Pressbooks, so now I've downloaded the JPEG image from Unsplash to my desktop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click Add Media, and you'll see there's my photo in there just because that's attached to my profile. What I'm going to do now when I click Add Media, that means I want to add an image into my chapter. So I'm going to click Upload Files, select Files. There it is. And while that uploads, I can start filling in some of this information here, the metadata and the important information for accessibility. So here we can say photo of a highway with multiple lanes going in.
And just for workflow purposes, Instructional Designer, I also put the alt text in the chapter.
You did.
I did. Just copy and paste.
Oh, look at you. Okay.
Also lessons learned from the ID who had to create everything. Yeah.
Okay. So Mel's already kindly put the alt text in there as well. The title, it's fine. The title doesn't really matter. But the caption, you might want to put a caption in there. So you could also put that the same thing as the alt text if you want, or you can give it some context based on the content of your chapter. The caption is what people will see right on the page if you've enabled captions. Otherwise, it's fine just to leave as it is. And sometimes the description, I'll put the same as the alt text. So, I mean, as long as your alt text is really well described, you could put that as the caption in the description if you like. Okay, so a couple other things just for the purposes of ensuring that we are giving proper attribution for our images that we're using in our Pressbooks. You can grab the source URL. So because I'm using Unsplash, I'll just grab the URL from the top of the page, put that in there. Author, we've got that here. So Dennis Nevozahai, put that in there. Author URL, I can just right click, copy link, put that in there. License, so like we said, CC0 is for anything on Unsplash, and we don't need to worry about adapted because we didn't adapt. Sometimes I like to leave this as large, but you can always change the size of the image later. So I'm going to insert that into my chapter. Voila, beautiful photo. There's my caption. So it's right in there. And I'm just going to highlight all that. That's now in our chapter. Okay. And then Mel has Unit 1 title. So what I could do is, you know, I could keep going. So maybe I want to add another horizontal line. Maybe I want to put the unit title here. If you want it all on one page, you can do that. Or you can save, add a subsection to your chapter, and then you can add it as another page. Because we don't have a lot of content up here, I mean, obviously, you know, you would have content here if you're using the template to fill it in. But because we don't, I'm just going to move along, and I'm going to make this heading 3. And then Mel has an activity in here. So I'm going to show now what to do when you want to add an H5P in there. So my chapter text, so anything that's just standard text, leave that as paragraph. Okay, so we've got those. So now let me show you how to add an activity. And I'm going to hit save before I do anything. Actually, right now, I'll just show you really quick what that looks like on the front end. So as you're working on your book, you can have that other tab open. That's sort of the front end of the book. And I'm going to navigate to chapter 1 where I'm working. So there's my fancy script heading 1. And Pressbooks has added a 1 up here. There's the chapter title. So that's my heading. Sorry, this is the title. This is the heading 1, heading 2. So clearly with this theme, they haven't really differentiated heading 1 and heading 2. You can always adjust, you know, some of the settings on that if you like. There's my fancy learning outcomes box. Chapter introduction. So you'll see heading 3 is a little bit smaller than heading 2, which is nice, you know, and you can, again, you can change the color, you can change the size of that if you choose to. And there's my paragraph text, photo, and then I'm going to continue on down here. So as you're viewing it, you could click edit, and you could view chapter up here from the editor. I just like to have it on a separate tab just because it's easy to flip between the two. Okay, so let's
Sarah.
Yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to also say, you know, like, I love the fact that when, so for example, you know, we chose a theme, and then maybe once you put content in, you're like, ooh, it doesn't show nice. Like, I don't like it. So I love that you can go in and you can change the theme, and it just automatically applies across the board, which is amazing. So you don't have to go back in and reformat everything, that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's my favorite part.
So I'm going to change to this Andressen theme. Has some blue elements to it. And I'm going to refresh, and ooh, look at that. And you'll see the lines are a little bit different. So the title, it seems to be, there's an underline that's been added to these heading 3s, which is kind of fun. Even the caption has like a blue color to it with a bit of an italics. Yeah. And there's other formatting you can do, like you can change the color of this learning outcomes box. There's different ways that you can modify that, but that's a little beyond what we're covering here today. If you want to just work with the simple themes in here, like this fancy one here. This one's really creepy looking. Yeah. Anyways, I'll keep it blue for now, just so I kind of like that. All right, so I was going to show an H5P. So you'll see it doesn't show up in my list here. So the reason why is because I need to enable it for this book. So I'm going to click on plugins. And I need to click activate for H5P. So that is going to make it show up on my list here. And now I can start adding H5P content. So I will show you how to create a simple multiple choice quiz. That's what I'll show. I give consent, sure. Okay. So H5P has about 40 different content types. And if you want, you can sort them alphabetically here. And there are a variety of cool things. If you ever want to learn about H5P, please get in touch with us. We love to talk about it and show people all the fun things you can do with it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a simple multiple choice question. You'll just need to click install for the first time that you're doing that. And then it just takes a second to install, but it's nice whenever you click on any of the content types here for H5P, there's a demo. So it'll bring you to their website where you can see a live demo of the actual content type, or there's some screenshots here. So I'm just going to click use. Sample H5P is what I'll call it. I'll just type in question. Answer 1. Answer 1 will be correct. Answer 2, and I'll put a third option, answer 3. Now, because we're not really covering it in this presentation, unless you want to stick around at the end, I can show you a few other things with H5P, but there's some additional options here where you can give feedback on the correct or incorrect answers. And there's a bunch of settings that you can apply here. Maybe I want to not show solution. So I'll do that and give 1 point for the whole task. Okay. So now that I've created my multiple choice, I've selected the correct answer. I'm going to click create. And what Pressbooks is going to do now is it's going to create that multiple choice question for me. So as soon as that is loaded, what I can do is now I'm going to grab this short code. So I want to put this question into my chapter. I'm going to grab this short code here. You can click copy. I'm going to go back to my book. Chapter 1 was where I was working. And let's scroll down here and I'm just basing it on this activity right here. So pretend that's my activity, paste, and you'll see this funny looking short code here with the square brackets. And then Mel has some references. So I'll throw that in. I think she's got another line there. No line. So references, and maybe I'll put that as heading 4, just to separate it out a little bit, and then insert references. Okay, so let's throw that in. Okay, so maybe I want to put that as a bulleted list. Oh, here's a fun fact. When you're creating APA formatted lists, maybe it's not a bullet list, but what you can do in these formats, there's a hanging indent, which is really handy for APA. So pretend that you have that in there. And then there's some other options here to pull quotes, are kind of like, you know, they make like a nice quote, which I'll show you what that looks like. Imagine that I have, I'm just going to scroll up. Here is a quote. So I'll show you what a pull quote looks like. So you would highlight your text, pull quote, and it'll show up kind of fancy on the page. So now I'm going to click save. I will make sure that I highlight my stuff here so that my teammates know that I've used all of that content on there. Okay, so like I said, you can click view chapter from here, but because I have it open in another tab, I'm just going to refresh my page. Oh, it looks like the pull quote on this theme isn't that fancy, but I wonder if I can change that. Give me 1 sec.
Sarah, why are you lying to our audience
Ah,
about how fancy the
gosh.
quotes are?
Pull quote right, pull quote left. Maybe I'm thinking of a block quote. I don't know. This is all about instructional design. It's just you try things and see what happens. Okay. I guess it's not that fancy. Anyhow, there's different ways that
depends
you
on
can
your
format.
theme.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the basic outline. And you know, you may not want chapter 1 displaying twice in here because you already have it as your title. You know, you can leave it at that if you want. Okay, so here it is. There's my page. Here's my H5P. Say I get it wrong, click check. Oh, I can retry. Check. Oh, there, I got a point. So this is the interactivity that you can embed into your chapters. And the one from the personal care assistant example that that I shared a bit earlier, maybe Mel can throw it in the chat one more time. You'll see if you go through that book, there's a lot of really cool H5P examples in there that you can take a look at. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to cover with inputting content. Now, the next part I'm going to talk about is YouTube links and accessibility. So if you want to hang around for that, if that's important to you, you can stick around with us. Otherwise, if you got what you wanted and you have a basic outline now of how to create a chapter in Pressbooks, that's awesome. And I'm glad that you've joined us. But I'll pause for any questions or any final thoughts if anyone needs to jump out at this point. How's the chat looking, Mel?
Pretty good. Just I got some thanks from Kathy. Thanks, a great session. And then I also dropped in our emails for people to follow up if they have any questions after. And I see Laura has her hand raised. Go ahead, Laura.
Hi, it's easier to ask it live than type it out. I have had trouble with moving things around, like from the admin side. So I'm trying to move something like way at the bottom all the way to the top, and it just doesn't seem to work properly. It seems like I can only move it up a little ways and then a little ways more and a little ways more, which is really difficult if you're moving like an entire chapter with 13 parts in it. So is there a better way to do that, or is that just Pressbooks?
I think that might be the limitation of Pressbooks. So let me have a look here.
Yeah, because I have a book, of course, with 10 chapters, and then each chapter, some of them have like 13 parts, which is too many, I know, but that's what I've done to keep the parts short. Yeah. So to move from the very bottom all the way up to say where chapter 2 would, you know, I've changed those chapters. It was brutal.
Yeah, I'd say that's a limitation of the tool, unfortunately. It appears that you can move it from chapter to chapter, but like you said, it is tedious because you have to move every single thing by itself. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend reaching out to eCampus Ontario, and they could submit that to Pressbooks as like a a feature request to try to find have a way that you can like click a whole bunch of things and move them as a group. Moodle is the same. We're using Moodle as a learning management system, and I can only move one thing at a time. And I'm like, why Moodle? Why?
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
I think WordPress is the same. Like if you're using Gutenberg or one of those other like built-in WordPress content creation like tools or whatever, you can move up just one block at a time. And it's
maybe, yeah. I think in some editors you can, some of them you can click and drag, but it all depends on the editor that you're using.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agonizing, but what do you do?
Yeah. But I mean, there might be a plugin available through that someone has created for Pressbooks that eCampus can explore and make available to us, because you know that's typically what happens with WordPress is there's a problem, someone somewhere in the world makes a solution and then we can all use it as a plugin. So I mean, that could be something you could take a look at.
It never hurts to submit your feedback directly to Pressbooks too. I know our team provides feedback to Google probably on a weekly basis about things that don't work for us as educators in higher ed. And it's funny to see, like, after we've made these suggestions, we get emails saying like, your solution is now live. And we're like, oh, amazing. So it never hurts to email the source and just say, hey, have you ever thought about this?
That's great. All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Anything else, Mel, before I cover videos and accessibility?
Chat looks good. Pretty clear.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So I'm going to go back into my chapter. So the next thing I'm going to show now is how to add YouTube videos to your chapter. So imagine I want to add it here. Maybe I have Unit 2 video. Okay. Now I'm going to add that as I think it was heading 4. I can always, oh no, I've got heading 3 for that. So you can always click on it, see what kind of heading you've used, heading 3. Okay, so here's a really great feature of Pressbooks is when you're going to YouTube, any video that you want to include from YouTube will automatically turn into it'll display the video player right into Pressbooks. So I'm just gonna grab, here's a fun one. Animated video. So from YouTube, you can click the share button down here and you can click copy. So then when I paste that YouTube link in here, it automatically will set it up like a YouTube video where, you know, if someone's reading the book, they can just click play and watch it right there. Some of the things that you can add to your, just gonna close that. I'll click save. One thing to be aware of for accessibility purposes when you're working with YouTube videos or any video or any multimedia in fact, is to ensure that you've got some captions available for your students or for whoever's reading the book. So an easy way to do that from YouTube is you can find the video. If the author has edited their captions, let me just move through this ad really quick here and then show you. I'm pretty sure I edited the captions on this video. Yeah. So typically when someone would turn closed captions on in YouTube, it'll say like auto-generated, but because our team has gone in and edited these captions on YouTube, these are accurate captions for the video. So what I could do is I can download that transcript. So these 3 dots show transcript. You'll see it shows it up here. And there was a way to toggle the timestamps. I wonder if YouTube got rid of that. Okay, what I'll do is I'm just gonna copy that. I just press Control C. Because I like working with Google Docs, I'll just throw it into a new doc here and I'll click paste. And what that'll do is it grabs all of the captions from that video. And I don't know why they got rid of that toggle option. There used to be a way to turn off the timestamps. If anyone knows how to do that, please let me know. But I will make it a little bit larger here. You could get really fancy and bring this into Excel and do some formulas to get rid of like the timestamps if you want. But for now, I know that these captions are accurate and then I can use them in my course. So what I'll do is I'll just copy the title here. I'll make that heading 1. Okay. The rest of it is normal text, so that's fine. Okay, so now what I can do is I can download this as a Word doc. So the nice thing about using Word docs for accessibility is if a student needs to make the text larger or smaller, or if they want to edit anything to help with their learning, they have that ability to do that in a Word doc versus a PDF, which is more, you know, just read only, and they can't make a lot of changes to that. So our Center for Accessibility has recommended that we always use Word docs when we're sharing transcripts with students. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add that video transcript here. I'm just going to put it as a heading 6 just to make it stand out a little bit. And typically what we would do is we would put the timing of the video. So 8:27, so video 8:27 minutes, so that students can plan their time. I mean, if they hover over the video on the player, it'll show that it's an 8-minute video. Download transcript is what I want to write. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to click add media, and I'm going to upload that Word doc that I just downloaded to my computer. So this is my transcript document. And I'm going to put transcript for video. Obviously yours would be a little bit more detailed than that. That's okay. And I'm going to click insert into chapter. So I don't want it to display like that. So I'm going to click edit and link options. I'm going to change the text to say download video transcript. Okay, so when I click save and I view my chapter, now you will see that the video is embedded into that chapter. Plus, we now have a nice transcript in a Word document that students can download. So if I click this, video plays, I can turn on the captions from here as well, which is really nice. So if I'm viewing them live, or I can click download video transcript and that Word doc will download to my desktop. So you've given your students multiple ways of engaging with the content for accessibility purposes. Any questions about videos? I'm just going. I'm just talking.
Give them all the info.
Is this helpful so far? People are sticking around, so I hope it's helpful. You can give me a thumbs up if you like. Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, so the next thing that I'll cover is, let's see here. I've got proper headings. I did alt text. I did photo captions, video transcripts. Okay, one last thing is, let's talk about H5P. So that's a really fun tool. Let's see here. Maybe, is there any type of H5P content that anyone is interested in learning about? And I can show a demo while we're all here. Branching scenario is really cool. Interactive video is really fun. Maybe I can show that. What do you think, Mel?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of them. Hotspot is pretty cool.
Let's do a image hotspots. Let's do that because I already have that highway image. So I'll show you an example of just another type of H5P that you can include into your book. This is a great way of getting students involved as well in creating interactive content. Like Mel, I think you created an open textbook with your students, didn't you? Way back when?
Yeah, we sure did. We created a communications textbook because they were paying $100 for a textbook, which is ridiculous because all communication stuff is online. So we created the textbook together. So the one thing is when we created the textbook, H5P wasn't really a thing. So if I was going to teach the course again, I would have students, my next students, take those chapters, edit them, revise them, add in H5P so that it's kind of like an asynchronous resource. The students get a lot of value out of creating their own content. They became experts at like their chapter content, and then they had to teach those chapters back to their peers in the class, which made them like super experts, which is awesome.
Yeah, and now that H5P is in there, they can even quiz each other and make some fun activities.
Yeah, absolutely. H5P is super awesome for embedding interactive stuff like outside the LMS, like in almost any type of web tool. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like the formative type of oh, Angela, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm new to OER. I have not created any OER, but I hear HP5 being talked about, and I think you just said now what it does. Do you mind just giving me just a super, like, how is HP5 different from Pressbooks, and why do we use it?
Yeah, so H5P is basically like interactive activities that can be embedded within text. So it could be multiple choice quizzes. It could be branching scenarios are really cool because it gives students the opportunity to like either read some text or watch a video and then make choices. And based on their choice, it's like choose your own adventure. Do you remember those books as a kid? Like those were amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can create that for your students, which is really amazing learning. And then
Okay.
after every choice, you can give them feedback on maybe why that choice is not necessarily the best. I know health sciences does that a lot to help students to really think through critical thinking when they're working with patients.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah, and I love like image hotspots, which also allow you to have an image and then you embed, they call them hotspots. So it's kind of like you can click on a little plus sign and it'll give you more information about that particular section. Yeah, so Sarah's showing some of the stuff.
Yeah,
It's
that's
really
cool.
amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I saw, there's also a question here, is do you think the students would struggle with the H5P at all? I think that because the H5P website has all the demos, it has all the content, it has all the stuff on how to do it. I think that students, if you give them some time to go through it and try to like just play around, that's the key, is like really let the students play, right? So I don't think the students would struggle. I think that I think they would figure it out. They're pretty tech savvy for the most part.
If they're creating it, yeah, they might need a bit of, they can look through this website here. I just put the link in the chat about the different types.
Yeah.
But navigating, if they're the ones that are doing the activities that you've created, sometimes we would include some instructions to say like, click the arrow in the bottom right-hand corner to advance the slides, or click the top right corner to proceed through the activity. Like there's a couple things that you can give them as instructions. But it is very user-friendly, like the user interface, both on the authoring side and on the viewing side, is great. So take a look at the link that I shared there. You'll see all the examples. Right now I'm creating an image hotspots. So I just grabbed Mel's activity, Mel's image here. There's her alternative text. Now, some of these too, if you're wondering about accessibility, Mel might be able to find, there's a page online from the H5P website that talks about the accessibility of each content type. So there are some considerations that you'll want to think about if you're going to be using, because most of them are accessible. Like you can tab through the activities, you can use the arrow keys. It'll read aloud some of the instructions to students, but yeah, so you can take a look. There's a list of content types there and which parts of them are accessible and which are not. So if they're not accessible, just provide an alternative means of accessing the content. Okay, so I'm going to show one example here, which is the image hotspot. I've got my image in there. I have a predefined icon. I'm going to use maybe a question mark, and maybe I want to make that white because my image is pretty dark, so I can put some white, maybe yellow. Let's throw some yellow in there. Okay. So when you're designing your activity, you can choose how you want to do it. Every content type is different. So this image hotspot one allows me to select where on the image the hotspot will occur. So maybe I put one right here in the middle. And for accessibility purposes, I like to cover the entire background image, just because then that, if a student is viewing it full screen, whatever the pop-up is that comes up when they click that, it will show up on the whole screen, and then they can click X in the top corner to close it, or click escape if they're using the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, and here you can choose, are they going to see text, video, or an image when they click on that link, click on that hotspot. So maybe I have some text just for purposes of sample text. Okay, and then maybe I want to add another hotspot, one more. I'll put one like over here, and maybe I want a video to show up, and I'll just grab this video again. So when you click on video, you can give it a video. 7 Superpowers is the name of my video. Now here you can upload your own video files. So if you are creating videos, you could put an MP4 file up there, or if you're pasting it, if you're grabbing it from YouTube, just paste the URL right in there and you'll know it works because it'll say YouTube here. Okay, and then there's a few other things you can add in there as well, but I'm just going to leave that for now. Cover background image with that one as well. Okay, so let's have a look what that looks like. So then you click create. Again, this is one of those situations where you need to save constantly because you will lose your you will lose your work, and I've done it. Okay. Now you can see yellow was probably not a good choice because I can't really see the question mark in there. So you can, always go back and edit. But I'm previewing my activity now. So the one in the middle had some sample text. Maybe you've got a paragraph here explaining what they're looking at on the image. Picture this in, your content area or your industry or topic, subjects, whatever you teach, how that could be applied. And then over here, I've got a video. So I click on that. There's my YouTube video. I can watch it right on the screen again. There's closed captions here. One thing though is you're going to want to include a transcript out like below the activity because you can't embed the transcript right in here. Actually, I think you can. I lied about that. Anyways, there are some accessibility features. I think video, let me see here. Accessibility. Yeah. So you can add a video track here and it's a VTT file that you can upload from YouTube. The way that works is trying to remember. Oh, I have to be the author of the video. So in your video settings, I can show that to you later. There's a few steps involved in that, but you can download the VTT file from your video editor area in YouTube, and then you can upload it into here. Why don't I just show that to you while we're here really quick because we've got time. I'm going to switch my account to, I'm supposed to be in the, let me see if I've got a video that I can show. I'm just in my personal YouTube channel here. Here is a video that I created. Okay, so when you're in your YouTube studio, if you come down to show more, trying to remember where it is. Hold on, subtitles. Right, okay. So this is where I've gone and edited my YouTube video subtitles, not automatic, but English Canada. These are the ones that I've published myself. Down here, you can click download VTT. So that is going to download that file to my desktop. This is not the same video that I'm showing you, but imagine this was for the same video. And when I come into here, let me just see if this is this the right one? I just want to make sure that's the right file that I've downloaded. Properties, VTT file. Okay. If you're wondering what is a VTT file, that is a transcript file specific to videos that has timings. It's like embedded within the file itself. So that's how YouTube will line up the captions with the audio in the video. So that's a handy tool. So when I click update, let's see what that looks like on our activity. And there should be an option now with my video. Where would it be? Wonder if I would have to access that separately, or maybe because it's not for the correct video. Anyways, I'd have to look into that some more, but there is a way to embed your VTT files in there. Let's just see, maybe when I add it to our chapter, if I go to organize, I won't go right to 11:30. So if anyone has questions before we go, please stop me at any point and I can show you anything at all that you'd like to see. Otherwise, I'll keep going. Okay. I'll keep going. I'm going to hit refresh on this. Okay, so now I've used that short code, I pasted it in here, and now I can see my activity. Let me see where that VTT file goes. Not here, apparently. Let me see. Annotations, subtitles, options. Nope. Download. Nope. 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 Well, that's a mystery. We'll have to figure that out another day. But yeah, so there are different ways that you can embed activities here into your Pressbook. These are just 2 examples of H5P activities, and you'll see multiple ways of you know, making a really engaging Pressbooks chapter. Okay, I will stop sharing now, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
And we also realize it's a lot of information all at once. So it's a lot to process.
Yes. Was this helpful? That's the most important thing.
Yes, it was helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Shauna's idea. Yes. Get it done. Tweak it later. I like version 1. I like calling everything I do, I call it version 1. And that will lower people's expectations to think that they have to do the Hollywood version. They don't need to do Hollywood on version 1. It's, you know, create a minimum viable product and ship it. Make sure that at least you've checked your spelling and grammar, everything works properly. It achieves the learning outcomes that you've set out to achieve. So that's the important part. And then you can always add later.
Thanks everyone for coming today and to just give us some feedback and, you know, share in our excitement, because we love Pressbooks and we love H5P and doing all that stuff. As you can see, we've kind of found a passion for doing this kind of work. So we found a workflow and wanted to share it out with everyone.
Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. It was great.
Awesome. Great. Well, we'll share that recording with everybody after this session. And if you have any other questions, we're happy to stick around. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Have you guys done anything with like I'm doing an 2 OERs right now, which is crazy, but I'm trying to address the whole equity and equity and diversity, inclusivity, and putting that in a textbook, because textbooks don't have that, right? Everything, there's gender research and whatever, and Shauna actually just suggested maybe putting in a little icon or something that would sort of, whenever I can find EDI material, then I can just have that little icon in there. But I think, have you guys dealt with that? Like maybe leaving.
I'm putting in notes saying, you know, there's just not a lot of research out here. So we have a binary approach, right? But the information we have is binary. But have you guys addressed that at all?
I do know of a Pressbook that does address a lot of those. Let me try to find it. Mel, if you want to jump in, I'm just going to try to find that.
I know that like when we're creating like the open resources, we try to like meet with the team and try to encourage people, like when you're coming up with resources or when you're looking at research, like to try to encompass multiple perspectives. So we try to just embed that within our practice. And but you're right, like having some kind of caveat that like there's not a whole lot of research to, in this area that come from different perspectives, and we're aware of that and we want to point it out. And using the little icon, I think, is a great idea to point out something that might not be obvious to people. So I think that's a great idea.
Thanks. Yeah, and Indigenous as well, to be able to try and add those pieces where we can.
And also being mindful that Indigenous knowledges aren't necessarily meant to be printed and kept static, right? So
Yes.
and also
yeah.
that's another kind of like consideration when we're putting that kind of stuff into text.
Sometimes I just link, right? I just link to somebody else's information.
Yeah, and I put a link in the chat. There's a great VLS project that completed in February, and they published this book called Learning to be Human Together. I need to take a day to like read through this entire book. It's fantastic. And it has a lot to do with like situating yourself into, where do you come from? What have been your life experiences? How could that be different for somebody else? How could we embed that into our teaching and learning practices? And using like the unpacking of that whole process and figuring out like, okay, how could we be better educators? How could we be better partners, better, coworkers, better teachers? It's a really, really great resource that lets you work through those pieces on your own, so that, and because it's CC licensed, the materials that they've shared can all be, remixed, reused in other places. So if there's anything of value in there that you find has been helpful, you can feel free to use that and attribute the project and link back to that project as well. Like you can link directly to a chapter, you can link directly to a subsection. There's a variety of things that you can, and I think if they have H5P in there, you'll be able to download them as well if they've made that available. They have some great videos in there though.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Sorry, it was kind of off topic.
Oh no, definitely ask away for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Any last questions before we go? Okay, this has been great. It's always great to connect with other educators across the province. Thank you again for your time today. I know it's a long one, 90 minutes, but we hope that you've left with some good ideas that you can take home with you and try out. All right. Okay, we'll stop the recording now and we'll share that out.